Well, on the campaign trail, President Obama set a goal of getting 1 million plug-in hybrids on U.S. roads by the year 2015. Well, now leaders from several different facets of the electric vehicle industry are announcing a more ambitious goal for EV deployment. The details are in what they're calling an electrification roadmap. And Clean Skies' Tyler Suiters was there for the unveiling. He talked to some of the players in this coalition. So this really goes beyond just automakers.
Oh, definitely, Susan. Carlos Ghosn, who is the CEO and the president of Nissan and Renault, was really the only representative in this coalition from what I would call big automotive, one of the major car makers. Bright Automotive, Coda Automotive, also part of this new coalition, but Nissan really the only major one. Also on hand, some of the ancillary industries and companies that work with the auto industry. That is A123 Systems. This is a company that in part makes batteries. Also NRG Energy and PG&E, both from the power sector. And then from the commercial sector, FedEx, Johnson Controls, Saft, and also GridPoint. Keep in mind just how integral smart grid development will be as we move toward electrification of the U.S. vehicle fleet. Now, the result of this coalition unveiled today a roadmap, what the group calls a vision for the mass deployment of electric vehicles and infrastructure. And leaders from these diverse groups spent this morning outlining what they have in place and what is still needed to realize their goal.
We put ourselves in the shoes of the consumer. The consumer wants to pay the same price, and it's possible. You know, the U.S. government has decided $7,500 incentive to the consumer if you buy a zero-emission car. French government, €5,000, exactly the same amount, $7,500. Japanese government, 700,000 yen, exactly the same amount. The Israeli has reduced the sales tax from 80% to 10% for electric cars. So everybody got it, that the consumer has to find it as an economically reasonable solution.
Japan has shown us a way in which they don't have the lowest cost country, and they're very successful in making very technical products and selling around the world, and they innovate. They invested. There was a cooperation between the Japanese government and Japanese industry. There was a clear direction of what they would do in each of the industries in which they've been successful, and the ultimate result of that, with that determination, was success.
What's to me most interesting about this isn't a hypothetical, it isn't a pie in the sky situation. This is technology, as Carlos said, that is now available, and it's a matter of will, and it's a matter of execution.
And the guide for that execution right here, the electrification roadmap, which by one account will cost more than $120 billion in federal money over 8 years. Some of the tenets here: 14 million electric cars on the road by 2020, more than 100 million by 2030, although David Crane with NRG today gave a number of 123 million as the goal for 2030. Also, the coalition wants to see 75% of all vehicle miles, this is light-duty miles, driven by EVs. It wants 75% of all those miles by the year 2040 to be from electric vehicles. Now, among the ways to get this, tax credits from the federal government, also federal loan guarantees according to the Electrification Coalition. But what is also clear is the role of the public sector going forward. And with that in mind, several representatives were on hand to discuss how they envision the future and this transition.
So any car manufacturer now who's thinking of going into the electric vehicle space that doesn't think about this car not only as a transportation device but also as a grid stabilization device is going to be in a anti-competitive situation, because they're not going to be able to compete with those car manufacturers that realize these regulation services are available and can be provided by these automobiles.
You know, the president, his view of the stimulus package was that it had to stimulate the economy now and also lay the foundation for what our future will look like. And I think the next important piece of that is comprehensive energy and climate legislation, because that creates the long-term signal with respect to energy security, clean energy, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and I think that helps to create the future framework that will support the kinds of actions that are laid out here today.
Ultimately, the consumer will make the judgment about where this country goes, but from the standpoint of public policy, we can set the stage for it with a wide range of tax credits and other things. We've done that in other areas. If we do the right thing, we can decide to initiate and encourage the kind of change, because from a national security and an economic security standpoint, that this country really does need going forward, in my judgment.
And since, Susan, we can't really have any conversation about this industry without talking about climate legislation, Senator Dorkin said basically in the Senate, this issue is all but dead until the new year. He said we'll be tied up through Christmas with health care. And Ed Markey also made a quick stop by today. He sees something passing, and of course he'd say passing, being the author of Waxman Markey, first half or first quarter of next year, which is the longest range I've seen so far.
Wow. Well, we'll see if that even happens. So, Tyler, you were there moderating a panel. Among the headliners there was Saul Carlos Ghosn of Nissan, also David Crane of NRG. You moderated a panel there. They were there talking about synergy in the private sector.
Right. This was on Friday at Nissan's rollout for its Leaf electric vehicle. This was out in Los Angeles in a discussion with several players in this industry, both public and private. And NRG and Nissan have been working together directly on working toward the infrastructure needed, overcoming some of the hurdles to make this goal a reality. Today, David Crane with NRG talked about breaking what he called the chicken and egg cycle. This is something he and I discussed on Friday out in Los Angeles. Essentially, his point is car makers won't buy or build EVs without the infrastructure already in place. The flip side is that infrastructure will not be in place until the cars are first built. This is a partnership. The electrification of the U.S. fleet requires a great deal of give and take with the private and public sectors as well.
Well, that's right. I think it requires a partnership within the private sector between companies like Nissan, the car maker, battery makers, and the electric sector like NRG. But then you're right, that also includes public and private partnership because, you know, public authorities they control a lot of the aspects of the transportation infrastructure, so they need to be brought into the mix as well.
And while we're talking about Friday's event out there in Los Angeles, you can see my entire conversations with both NRG's David Crane and Nissan's Carlos Ghosn right here on cleanskies.com. And I think to sum it all up, Susan, bottom line, there are clear instructions and guides that this electrification coalition wants put in place by the government, but frankly, they're going to have to wait in line. And it's a pretty long line.
Well, we will keep following their efforts, and we'll check out that panel discussion on the website. Thanks, Tyler.
Of course.